I'm here at my friend Eileen's house, and we're just going to see what composes a typical day for her. Hey,
How you doing?
I'm good.
I'm glad you stopped by.
Yeah.
I'm sitting out here with Marley. He's a little nervous.
Yeah.
I found him in my garden a few months ago, and he's not used to being outside again. I think he's afraid he's going to get stuck out here.
Oh.
This is Marley.
Hi, Marley.
Actually, it was more like 2 months ago. I think we found him out there in the garden one day. He was so tiny.
Oh.
I love cats.
Yes.
So yeah, you got some tea?
Yes. Nice day out here.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. You want to go inside? I don't want
Sure.
you to get away.
Yeah.
Come on, boy. Okay.
So you work out of your home.
I do. I've done it for quite a while. I started my business about 30 years ago, and maybe I'll tell you more about how I started later on.
You have a lot of artwork just all over your house.
Thank you.
Is this a blown up photograph?
No, this is a painting. I illustrated a couple books, one back in 2005, the other, oh gosh, I think it was 2014. They were self-published, basically family projects. A World War II story about my uncle and my father during World War II. And then another book
And
called,
is that who's in the painting?
That is.
Okay.
So this is an original painting
Wow.
that was used in the book. And
Wow.
I took a little photograph about this big and worked from it. It was a photo taken of my father and my uncle during World War II. They met up in Luxembourg by chance. And they spent a Sunday together, and they had a series of photos taken. So this is my Uncle Bill when he was young, and he was a radio man in World War II. This is my father. He was an ambulance driver. My father was the oldest of the 8 kids. But later I'll give you just a little glance at the book that I did called Letters to Rodney, which tells about my dad's experience in the CCC during the Great Depression. So
very cool.
But this is one of my favorite paintings, and yes, my own home is full of some of my artwork. Yes. I have a painting over here I did in college, actually, and it's called Barring Together, and it was for my first freshman year at University of Delaware for a design class. We had to take a black and white photo and somehow colorize it. And I remember working on this. It was due the next day. And I went to the art studio. Probably I started this maybe 11 or 12 at night. And I remember leaving there about 4 in the morning. The art studio in the Taylor Gym at the University of Delaware, that was wonderful to hang out with back in, I guess it was 1981, and some of the art students would come and go during the night, and I did get, I think, an A+ on this. And the teacher, she was a grad student, Jane LaRue, I think her name was. She said that my design work was stronger than my drawing work, and I took that as a compliment because back in the day I was a little uncertain of what I would do with my life and being an art major. But I love this painting. It was my the black and white photo I had was my cousin and her boyfriend at the time. He was barring the chord, and she was playing, and the painting's called Barring Together.
Very neat.
And I can take you in here real quick. Just a real quick sweep, I got stuff everywhere, but yeah, this is a painting of my son Zach I did when he was 16. This is something I'm working on. I just set it aside in here. Painting of my son Jonathan.
So are you primarily a painter?
No. Well, I love to paint. That's one of the main things I've eventually increasingly done. But I started my business doing calligraphy.
Okay.
Back in 1989, when my son Zach was a baby, I wanted to stay at home and, work from home, and I love to create. And I thought, well, what can I do artistically that would earn money?
Yes.
Wedding invitations, I can address that. I taught myself how to do calligraphy, and from a kitchen table, and we lived in a mobile home in Glasgow, Delaware, and I would get, friends from church would have me do little poems. I would make cards, and back in the day, if I could earn an extra $25 a month, it helped with groceries,
Yeah.
diapers, whatever.
Yeah.
As my family grew, and then eventually I had a second son that was born in 1994. Then there was little league fees and braces and all
Yes.
yes. So
everything that goes along with having kids.
So you ask, am I a painter? Well, I started out doing calligraphy, but I was kind of always looking for the next thing I could do to earn money, right?
Yeah.
So hold on. So we were at the beach one time. Oh gosh. Jonathan was about 2, and Zach was, I guess that would make him about 6. And there was a caricature artist we hired to, we splurged to have their caricature done. And I'm watching him do this, and he was so methodic. And I'm like, how did you learn to do that? Because it kind of reminded me of calligraphy. I was watching him do other people, and he always kind of started the same way. And he's like, well, I learned this in a weekend at Hershey Park. And I'm like, in a weekend? He's like, yeah, there's a video course you can get. And, you got to have some art background. And I thought, you know what? I bet I could do that. I thought, he looks like he's making some good money there.
Yeah.
And, even though I love art, sometimes it's about, I need to buy the braces or help pay for the braces or the little league fees or whatever it was. There is a hilarious story. I won't bore you with it now. I call it my 8,000 word dishwasher story. If we get time at the end of this video, I should tell that story. So anyway, I got a video course. I ordered it through an art magazine, and then, I would, at the end of our home church meetings, I'd say, can I practice on you? And oh man, my caricatures were pretty bad, and it's just like, I eventually practiced, and then I got my first gig, and then, one thing led to another. And, with the calligraphy, as I started to do more poems, I thought, well, I could do some little illustrations in watercolor of flowers and put with it. So that, led. And, then for a while I was teaching art at Toll Institute with homeschoolers in Delaware. And, so I was refreshing myself on art skills using the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain and by Betty Edwards. And, I thought, I'm teaching the students, portrait drawing and all. I thought, I feel like doing, a watercolor of my sons. And, so one thing led to another. So am I a painter? Yes. Am I a calligrapher? Yes. Do I do murals? Yes. Do I sell wedding products that are, streamlined wedding gifts? Yes. Do I address invitations? Let's see. Somewhere along the way, I learned to do bridal bouquet preservation, which I really enjoy. Anything with flowers and, I love.
So do you still work off of your kitchen table?
No. It has gone, Beyond that, we had, in Delaware, we moved from the mobile home to, we lived on Martindale Drive in Brookside for a few years, and then Webb Road in Newark. And each place I went, I took over a little bit more space, bedrooms, back porches. And then I had a home before I came here to Alabama in Delaware on Nottingham Road. And I had quite a large studio there, the full basement, and Then I had a 2-car garage that we had renovated, carpeted, built custom cabinets. It was a display area, so it's kind of similar to what I have going on here
All right.
in Alabama. So.
How about we see your studio then?
Okay. I'm trying to pause here. Come on in. So you go through the kitchen.
Okay.
And, so this is my work area. I spend a lot of time in here, all hours of the day and night sometimes. You know, it's not like
This is quite a lot. And you've used every single space.
Yes, and as I was saying, it's not like, I mean, some people, they may not understand, you know, how is it that an artist like me, what is a day like for me? You know,
Yeah.
I don't come into this room at 9 o'clock and leave at 5. I kind of work on and off throughout the whole day and into the evening. I do things in pieces.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice to have everything accessible. So anyway, what are your questions?
So you've got frame samples, I'm assuming. Do you do framing?
I do. So that was another thing, you know, always developing and growing my business. Back in Delaware, I guess it was maybe around 1995, 1996. A friend of mine had a frame shop, and she was in Wilmington, Delaware, and she's like, you know, Eileen, you're buying these frames at AC Moore. If you do custom framing on your, you know, wedding gifts and your other work, you can make some money at that too. And she says, here, why don't you, you know, take some corners and, you know, I'll cut you some frames if you get an order. And I'm like, oh, that's wonderful, thank you. She showed me how to cut mats, and I bought a mat cutter, and so anyway, it kind of grew from that.
Yeah.
As so, you know, in Delaware, and I'm trying to increase my flow of local clients here to do custom framing.
Yes.
But I certainly I feature many corners on my website, and the products I ship out, you know, I do my own custom framing. So yes, I order the. I dropped something. I order the frames as chops, and then I join them, or some of them come already joined. But you know, it's wonderful to be able to have a frame cut the exact size that it needs for the artwork.
Yes.
And so anyway, okay, so around here is my, I start to have display areas in my shop, you know, where I try to show, you know, examples of things I've done in the past. This was a church up here in Caddo, Alabama. I did a picnic, and I drew the kids and, you know, made this up. And so anyway, these are examples of my custom wedding products that I sell on my website, and I've shipped, you know, all over the United States. Maybe I can tell you more about this piece later. It's a friend of mine called it my signature piece. It's called a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken, and I'll tell you more about that maybe later. But you know, selling personalized gifts where you can put a person's name and wedding date into the piece like this, that is a good. Okay, so you're looking at some of my.
Yep, I was just going to browse while you talked here real quick.
Okay, so wedding vows. I do. Let me get out here so I can show you. This is an example of bridal bouquet preservation that I do. This sample's been preserved for over 10 years, so you know, gradually the flowers start to antique. And you know, I learned when I was in Delaware that many brides would come to me for calligraphy on their wedding invitations. So they'd come into my studio and to drop off their envelopes, and they'd be like, oh wow, you do all this? And I'm like, yeah. And then I'd be like, you know, if you want, I can preserve your wedding bouquet. So, the goal was always kind of, adding on some services.
Yep.
Maybe I can do your wedding vows. This was I did this many years ago, 2007. It was a blended family, a second marriage, and I did a little, maybe you could zoom in here and see.
Okay.
I did a little portrait of the couple, and they were getting married at the beach. They wrote their own vows, many hearts, one family with their names and the children. And this is, okay, so, always looking for the next thing, right? So This is live event painting. One time, I guess this was maybe around 2000, I want to say 2009 or 2010. Someone contacted me on Etsy. She's like, I'm getting married up in Lancaster, and I would like an artist to do a live event painting. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. And so she showed me examples and explained. She said, I looked at your work. I think you could do it. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So I did go and do her event. And then I practiced on, another bride I knew that was getting married at the Lavier's country club. I remember I went there and did her wedding. But eventually, I got reasonably good at it, and I've done a number of weddings where now this one, they paid for me. I did this after I moved to Alabama. This bride's name was Monica. I remember it was a Jewish wedding on a Sunday up in New York, and they actually paid for me to fly up there. And, I did their first dance, and I set up in the venue and kind of sketched it out several hours before. And then we had talked about who would be in the painting. And I worked from photos, and I worked live during the event. So it's entertainment for the guests. They enjoy coming watch me do this. And then I shipped the canvas back home. I finished it up, shipped it back to her. And, like for example, with that, it's all about marketing sometimes. Yes. Then these are can you see that? The little, the package price, they get prints for the parents of the bride, parents of the groom. They get the original canvas, and they get these little inserts for their thank yous, so their guests can see the final product, and I get some advertising. So let me, I'm talking a lot here, but let's...
Well, what do you do over here?
Well, this is my framing table. It's always shows that I'm working, a lot of mess, but like right now, this is a bouquet preservation I've finished up, and as you see, it's not secured yet. I still have to frame this and ship it out, and I just finished this this morning. This is a painting on a matted wedding invitation. If you down here, that's the venue where the bride was married and the types of flowers she had. And then over here, this is my table.
It looks like you're getting ready to ship too.
Yes, I am. I do a lot of shipping. Okay, so this is my signature piece. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. I'm getting ready to pack this and ship today.
There are names on it.
Yes. So, and as you see, there's 2 more here waiting to, this one needs a frame. I do a lot of these on my website. So I'll tell you the story. Back in 1991, I guess my oldest son, Zach, was about 2 years old, and I was doing the calligraphy. And my friend Pam from our church, she said, I have a wedding to go to. Can you come up with a design with the name of Jesus and the bride and groom together and their wedding date? And I'm like, okay. And so I thought about it, and I guess I ended up making it more complex than she was asking. I thought, she wanted the verse, a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken, which comes from Ecclesiastes. It's read at a lot of weddings, talking about, a marriage with God in the center. of the couple,
Yeah.
strengthens it.
Yes.
So I came up with a design where she said the name of Jesus, but I thought, in the Bible, like these names, Lord God Almighty, Light of the World, Refuge, Strength, Word of Life, Advocate. So I actually made a design that braided the bride and groom's names with different names and attributes of God in a biblical themed names. And, she loved it and she gave it as a gift. And someone else from our church saw it and they're like, I would like one of those too. I'm like, okay. A little bit more money for, I don't know, Christmas toys or whatever it was.
Yes.
And so I did one for, I believe it was for Cindy or Donna. Anyway, they hung it on their wall. Someone else at our church saw it and they're like, I want one too. So this piece just kind of took off. And then someone suggested that I put it in the local Christian bookstore, and I started to get orders, and then it was displayed and still is at Sandy Cove Retreat Center in Northeast Maryland.
So how many of these have you done now?
So I actually at some point started a spreadsheet in Excel to try to keep track of all the couples and their wedding dates that I've done, because I thought, someday when I'm in a nursing home, I can just sit back and look at my laptop while I'm listening to John Lennon or whatever. Our generation, what are we going to,
Yeah.
And I can look at, so you ask how many couples I've done. I believe right now I've done about 1,500 couples.
Wow.
And I eventually, back maybe around the year 2000, a friend of ours, Ken, at the time, I never even used the internet, email.
Yes.
We didn't have a computer. He's like, you gotta have a website. So he's like, I'm gonna make you one. And so I came up with the name lettersource.com. He's like, that is great, letter source. And so he posted it, and eventually, we got our own computer and I learned to use email. But, I would get orders for the cord of 3 strands. But point is, always looking for the next thing, grow my business. I expanded out. I started getting orders from all over the United States for the cord of 3 strands piece. And just like when I started it initially, someone orders it and sees it and someone else wants it. The recipient, they're going to a wedding. I always think the best advertising is your work, getting it out quickly, efficiently. You don't want to let orders sit, because the quicker you can get an order out, the sooner someone else will see it, and the sooner you'll get another order, hopefully, So anyway, do you mind for a minute? I need to cut one more mat.
Okay. We'll watch you cut it then.
Yes. So, 2.5 inches. Okay, so.
Oh, I'm going to try and walk over here. That is fascinating. I've often seen matted pieces and I had no idea how they actually cut it.
Yes, this is a bevel cutter. So it's on a 45-degree angle, the blade, when you push it in. Do you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, see. So you need to have a really nice mat cutter to get a good cut. I mean, I know there's cheap mat cutters people try to do by hand, and you can tell it's kind of ragged. But anyway, so that's how it ends up. And double mats can be quite fun. There's a way that double mats are done. So, I got to get this one addressed, shipped out. I've been selling a lot of stuff on Etsy lately.
Okay. Note cards.
Yeah, note cards.
And
And over here, yes, sometimes I have open studios around the holidays. When customers drop in to pick up things, local customers, I always say, feel free to browse around. If you want to zoom in, you can see some of the little inspirational quotations that I've done over the years, and some little floral watercolors I've painted.
oh, those are pretty.
And, okay, so yeah, we can meander on over there if you'd like.
So I'm guessing this is where you do most of your clerical work then for your business.
And clerical work, it's where they say the bane of your existence. Again, people probably think, oh, how wonderful to sit and just paint and create all day. It seems to me that it feels like at least 50 to 75% of my time is consumed with the running of a business like this, so that when I actually get to create and do stuff, that's the fun part. I do my own web design, I do my own clerical work, bookkeeping, correspondence, quotations. What are you looking at?
Oh, how do you get the flowers like that?
Well, I can show you. These are some bridal bouquet preservations in process. Here, we can go down here. This is the work table I use to put together bridal bouquets and.
I could not see doing this on a kitchen table.
No. But this is for Elizabeth. She had orchids. I make little notes as these come in. I try to keep the bouquets separate. One time at our old house, I had 5 bouquets going at one time. And I was working in a smaller space, and I actually was having trouble keeping them all straight, trying to unload them, and they were over the floor everywhere. So this is really a nice space to work in. So when I get a bouquet, people ship them from all over. I just had a couple from Chicago recently. I pull them apart, cut the flowers up. They ship them in foam coolers on ice.
Okay.
I made a little note here, Betty, so I keep it straight. But I have 2 big tubs of silica gel. This dries out the color in the petals really quickly, so they don't mold.
Okay.
So I have a few straggling flowers in here, and I'll pull it up. What I do is get the silica gel is contained in this barrel first.
Okay.
Not really a barrel, whatever.
Yeah. It's a container of some sort.
Yes. Container. So then I would take the wire baskets and put them in, and then say cut off the roses, put the heads in, and then pour the silica gel over, and this gets closed up for maybe a week or 2. It's silica gel is basically salt, so it dries them out. So this is, when the fun part to pull out the wire baskets and shake, and then you see the flowers, and this is a ranuncula and little spray roses. I'm starting to gradually learn the names of popular wedding bouquet flowers. So then what happens is I have these presses that get clamped down, and basically layers of, all the flowers get laid out like little pancakes, alternating with cardboard and paper, clamped down, flattened, and then, then as you saw on the table, then I have to start gluing them back together. This fabric has been stretched, as the background, so I'm
very
working on
nice. It's neat. You have lots of projects going all over the place, don't you?
I'm never bored. That's the way my brain works.
So is this just for fun, or did someone order this?
No. So most of my work is commissioned work. That's what you get paid for.
Yes.
In the kind of business I run. But, I love the times where I can do something just for my pleasure.
Wow, you've got a lot of things going. This is beautiful. Is this
Thank you.
a commissioned piece?
No, this is for my own inspiration, but of course, you know, everything I do, my goal is to make money, even if I'm doing it for pleasure. Just like when I started and learned the caricatures. Yes, it's fun, but the goal is to make money. So, doing what I love.
Yeah.
So all summer long out in my gardens, and I'll show you the gardens later, I kept photographing these glorious sunflowers, multi-head sunflowers, mammoth sunflowers, and I have, you know, prints. And I've been working on putting this together. I saw this little hummingbird on Facebook. I loved it. And I'm going to have bees, and I'm going to kind of make this a little bit Van Gogh-like, you know, with little flecks and outlines. And
Yeah.
then I can, you know, get a good image of it, make prints, cards, put it on Etsy. I can crop out little sections, make different note cards. I can sell the original. I can make canvas prints the same size that are like the original, but less expensive. And here, this is my calligraphy table. This is a light table. I'll show you. My mother's next door neighbor, Mr. Kane, made this for me many years ago. He did woodworking. I grew up next to them, and I told him what I wanted. And so sometimes on calligraphy, I will lay it out on the computer, do a print, so I have a really good layout, and I put it on here and then put the paper over top of it, tape it down. That way I have a guide to do the hand calligraphy.
Okay.
So, you know, it's really nice having this out. You know, locally, sometimes I get calls, people say, you know, I need some certificates done, I need them quick. So they'll stop in, you know, sometimes they'll wait while I, you know, come over here and do it. But that's what this is for hand calligraphy.
Very
I
cool.
do some of my calligraphy by computer, obviously.
Okay.
And these are some pieces I worked on this morning, adding some hand calligraphy to that. I still need to kind of touch it up. But
And while you were talking over here, I noticed.
look at Marley. Look at him. He is into everything. I have to cover this stuff at night. This little guy. Fourth cat.
Like having a teenager or
Yes.
a toddler. They're into everything.
Yes.
This is a family tree?
Yes. Yes. That was a huge project I did several years ago for a woman up in New York. She was going to go to, slips my mind, Czechoslovakia. No, wait, is that still? Oh, it's slipping my mind. Somewhere. Wow. I'm drawing a blank. These were relatives. This is maybe her great grandmother, and you know, her side of the family was right here, and they were going to have a family reunion. These were 6 of these siblings. I believe these siblings came from this descendant.
Okay.
And this is a print just for display, but
Yes.
I did the original tree and designed this on Photoshop, scanned it in, but then, you know, a lot of what I do, I scan and save. So I took this same olive tree and put this on my website, and then you might want to zoom in. This is kind of a variation that occurred later that was computer done, but it resulted from me, this original pen and ink work, you know, I saved and scanned. And actually, let me show you something here real quick.
Okay.
I had forgot I had this piece. I'm excited to get back to this. Can you see this? I love pen and ink. So this is another family tree kind of design I'm trying to work on. And, you know, it's 2 trees meeting with the hands. And
there are hands there.
Yes.
Oh, that's neat.
So I've scanned this and I've developed it as a family tree template. But then I have the original. I'm thinking of putting a woodland bride and groom and some fairies and flowers and love to create. So this is the artwork for a Christmas card design for Solly Crane Company. They're a local company. I've done their Christmas cards several years. And, you know, I've got their little reference photos out here. This is my watercolor table where I paint. Yes.
Okay. The other painting with the sunflowers.
That's acrylic.
That's acrylic. Very cool.
So acrylic dries quickly and you work vertically on an easel. Obviously watercolor, you can't work vertically because it's...
That would run.
Yes, it's a little wet. And this is a caricature I'm working on, retirement. Well, the guy's not retiring. He's moving on. Yeah, this is for George Mason University.
Very cool.
I've done a number of pieces for them. But anyway, little, you know, tubes of watercolor, brushes. Yeah. Let me grab my tea. Where do you want to go now?
Well, let's look through here. I'm guessing these are examples of things you've done. Are any of these originals or are they all prints?
Well, most are prints. Usually the client gets the original. This piece I did several years ago for a client here. I had done some face painting for her, and she asked if I'd do a portrait of her daughters.
Oh.
We went to the park up in Decatur behind the post office, and I took some photographs of them. The best paintings come from my own photographs often. And this was acrylic on canvas, but I had a print made of it on canvas just because I loved it so much. And now this is an original watercolor. I just did it in Delaware back in 2010. I saw this photo of this young girl from our church. She was actually in someone's kitchen. She was standing there. It was on Facebook. And I just was inspired by the lighting coming in on her. And I thought, you know what? I feel like painting her. But, you know, I just made a solid background that just the striking light on her with the blue-green tones in her flesh. And it was kind of an experiment. The same with this. This is an original pastel of my cousin. I'm not crazy about working with pastel, but that's my cousin Laura, and I think her kitty's name is Yang Yang. That was many years ago, 2007 I did that.
So I see some of the caricatures and that sort of thing that you've done here.
Yes. So these are all prints. I did this piece several years ago, a corporate event, and I do pet portraits, house portraits.
Nice.
Retirement caricatures. Oh gosh, this one was done. Here, you can zoom in on the signature. 2006. This was Big Daddy. They told me he was a blood-sucking finance manager at DuPont. that was a fun one to do, and you know, so.
Okay. The others from Sally, I see.
Yeah, these are their previous Christmas cards.
These are fun.
Yes. Before we move outside, let me show you one more thing.
Okay.
When you came in, I mentioned illustrating some books and self-publishing. They're on Amazon, but this is Letters to Rodney, and then this is the model maker, and this was done. My Uncle Bill had made these model World War II planes out of popsicles and clothespins, and he was in the Battle of the Bulge, so I kind of used it to tell the story about. But this is that painting. You remember as you came in and saw that? It's in the book.
Oh, that is neat.
Yes. So okay, well, where do you want to go?
Well, we were kind of heading out this way.
Yes.
So.
More
flower preservation?
No, this is not anything I did, but a man I knew, his name was Charlie. He was an elderly man I met. He was a calligrapher in Delaware. He lived in the next neighborhood. Somehow I met him. He was the kindest man. He was downsizing. He said someone made this for him in the 1960s, and he knew I did flower preservation. He's like, "Do you want it?" I'm like, Charlie, I would love that because it
really
will show
show
what it might look like in 50, 60
60 years. Yeah.
Yes.
Is this you?
That's me. That's me and Chicklet in my house in Delaware.
And I see that you've got some painting up over here. So you've
yeah,
always painted your houses.
Well, it started. I was too. Oh, my mind, like creativity all the time.
Yes.
I went to a baby shower actually, and I was on someone's sun porch, and that room was painted this green, and I fell in love with it. It was like antifreeze. I don't know. I just thought, you know what? I want to paint my kitchen and living room that color. And my friend Joanne came in, and we were talking, and she said, you should paint like the ceiling, like sky and clouds. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. So yeah, I had a big sun and clouds, and yeah, that's me and Chicklet, and that's me in my garden out in Delaware.
So you garden too?
I love to garden. I started to garden when I was a child. My grandfather was a fruit farmer in Western Maryland, and the book Letters to Rodney tells about their farm. And my dad, my uncle, my father died when I was 16, but I was real close with my uncle in years after that. And I remember always going to his home in Western Maryland, and he'd take me through his gardens and show me his raspberries and his squash and everything. And it's just the connection I feel when I work outside. I can remember my dad telling me, he'd keep me busy all the time because I was an only child, to plant the little radish seeds, and he'd dig a little trench, and he'd say, okay, put them like an inch apart, and I'd be, well, how far is that? And he'd say, take your thumb. It's the, from the joint to the tip, that's about half inch. So I would, so yes, I love to garden.
Do you have gardens here?
I do.
Can we see those?
Sure.
All right.
Okay. Well, we go outside.
Artwork everywhere.
Well, this is from Delaware. When I did that book in 2005, there was a little bit of local publicity in the New York Post, and this is my uncle before he died. This was in the Hagerstown paper. He was so proud of that and enjoyed it, and the attention they contacted him, and so that's that. Oh, what a nice day.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I'm always doing creative stuff for myself. This was from an old tabletop.
Wow.
And I just, it's part of the Lord's Prayer.
Yes.
I enjoyed that. I saw a similar image online on Facebook with the tree intertwining, and I thought, I'd love that outside.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, this just goes to show you can make art out of anything.
So my gardens are a little dead right now. This is the second year I've been trying to get a produce stand going. A couple years ago, my father-in-law, he's like, you should do a produce stand. And I thought, wow, I don't need to do anything else. But one night I was driving back from Birmingham. It was December. It would have been 2017. I had a job. And my mind was just wandering, if I did a produce stand, how would I do it? And I got inspired. I thought, you know what? It's good exercise, and it would be fun. It would be a great way to network with people in the community, to draw them in. It's pretty expensive to grow tomatoes and maintain gardens and stuff. Yes. You don't make a whole lot of money selling tomatoes, but it's therapeutic. It gives me a break, good exercise. And if I can just kind of sort of break even and draw people in and advertise, it's a win-win. So do you want to see my gardens?
Sure.
Okay. Like I said, they're dying a little bit right now.
Well,
I did plant some kale and greens.
Well, it is fall, so things will be slowing down.
So I had made these, I got some free wood, and I made these I'll call them contraptions or pods. My idea was squash in the middle, trellis, cucumbers, but it was way too overgrown. Next year, tomatoes in the center. I'll put the squash somewhere else. So, oh, little grasshopper. Do you see it?
I do.
I love grasshoppers. So these are Mexican sunflowers. Yeah, okra. I love growing okra since I've lived here in Alabama. I never ate it before, never grew it. It's so easy. But you gotta pick it every day or it gets too big.
Yeah.
And I have been so swamped lately, it has just not gone well. This is the size that you would want to pick okra. I'll just pull it. But, you know, my chickens have been getting a lot of big pods. And, yeah, you know, it's a work in progress. You know, you can't do something like this overnight, so.
So do you have specific hours for your produce stand, or how does that work with people stopping by?
Well, you know, I thought of different ways to do it. Pick your own, and I might try to do that at some point. But really my goal is to, you know, in the summer months when produce comes in, come out in the morning, pick some stuff, whatever I have. Sometimes, you know, I get friends to help me here and there, and that's part of growing my business, getting help.
Yeah.
You know, I don't do all this just by myself. You know, I do get some help sometimes.
You're not Wonder Woman.
you know, you've helped me, right?
Yes.
So you're familiar with what's going on here. So yeah, you know, go out in the morning before it's too hot here in Alabama. Pick some stuff, put it down. Do you see the produce stand down there? Now,
Okay.
I have learned I love to build things. You know, my son Zach is like, he loves gardens. He comes and he'll look at everything. That's intense. You know, it's like he doesn't understand why. You know, part of my joy is like just hammering things. You know, I used to spend a lot of time with my dad in his workshop, and he would do hammering and repair Kentucky rifles and all kinds of stuff. So as a child, I spent a lot of time, and I've discovered I love to hammer and build stuff. Here, we need a panoramic of like, you know, if I never succeed totally in growing things, at least I have fun building, right?
Yes.
So back to the question. You know, go down, put produce out on the stand. And then I'm going to show you here. There's signs where people come up here and pay for it.
Okay.
The problem I learned this summer was when I made that produce stand, the sun comes in at a bad angle. And things were, you know, it's pretty hot here in Alabama. They were perishing quickly, especially peppers. So now I've got, like, I was working on a roof. I might do next year like some kind of shade that comes down with the afternoon sun. I experimented with putting bags of ice out there. But, you know, this summer I sold a good amount of squash, and people came in. People were stopping, taking my card. I've got a Facebook page, you know, homegrown produce. Carrying a piece of okra. Okay, so enough of that. Let's, I'll take you in here. So this is the idea. You know, I've always got ideas, right? And you learn, you know, some ideas, you know, work, other ideas, well.
I see you kind of painted parking spaces, probably to help.
I did. My neighbor across the street, she was over one night. She's like, because people were confused. They would pull in the driveway. I didn't want them to block it. And then I put a sign, park up there. She's like, well, you should, like, you know, make an arrow and paint some parking spots. So I did. You know, from the house, I look out, they're a little crooked. I kind of, I just want to look at that. Okay, so they come in the driveway. They get their produce. There's a sign that says, put it in a bag, come up here to pay. So then, you know, ideally, you know, maybe next year and the year after, we'll get this going. They pull in, they park, they come up here, okay? Now, it was still a little confusing. See, last year I just had this out. This. I built this in the garage. After my trip from Birmingham, where I was contemplating my father-in-law suggesting starting a produce stand, I thought, oh yeah, I could have a temporary cart. So you see this is on wheels, and I built this, over the winter, and I put it out last year. And see over here, I had it over here, but people were confused because they'd come in and it's like, well, where's the produce?
Yeah.
So then this year, around March, so I started to make this, more like a produce stand. But so then they come up, they get it, they come up here. And to further clarify the gift shop, which I want them to go in, I started painting, follow this way to the gift shop. Thanks for stopping by. To pay for produce. You can come around here. If you want.
Okay.
And, this is, it's going to be like a yellow brick road.
Yes.
Okay. So they come up here, right?
Oh.
And I don't price the produce. That takes too much time. Scales and all. I say, honor system, leave what you think's fair. My son actually suggested that. He says people are actually more generous than you expect, especially if you don't price it. He knows a lot of people that, he's kind of in that organic permaculture kind of ring. He says they just put it out and, leave what you think's fair. So here, again, the goal is network with community. I don't know if you can see there's some information about artwork. And in Delaware, I did a lot of parties, face painting, caricatures at kids' parties. I've not done as much here. And so I want to meet people that might learn about that locally. Yeah. So they come up, they, leave their money in here.
Yeah.
And then they might think, a gift shop. So they come on over here, right? And then they see, gift. Oh, this is so much work this summer. I kept doing buying sawhorses, I lay in bed thinking about these kind of ideas. So gift shop open, browsers welcome. So this outbuilding was here on the property when we moved here, and so then, gift shop.
Yeah.
And I still need to get the electric turned on in here. It's been off for 10 years. But there's a bathroom here. This used to be an old auto body shop. And so, you and you remember when we paint this green and we, and so here I've got examples outdoors of those wedding pieces that I do and information they can take. I love that. I picked that up in Lancaster one time. And, there's now things out here are priced, and a lot of my time, again, doing things like this, trying to think, okay, how will people pay for it? So, there's envelopes. They can come in, maybe they'll think, oh, you do wedding gifts. They'll take my card, and then, maybe 6 months from now, they'll remember, oh, that lady out there, she does, let me contact her. Yeah. See, that's the way my business works. It's not instant. I've been doing this like 30 years. And, you start with an idea and you invest and you spend money, you spend time. Some things work out well, others don't. And, it's like planting seeds, just like gardening. You put something out and maybe 2 years later you get the return on it. What are your questions? Right
I'm
now?
just kind of going over and just kind of showing what all you've got in your gift shop.
Yeah,
so you've got some of the prints and that sort of thing that you have inside as well.
Oh, I love that. So,
That's almost my motto.
Yes. So out here, obviously I'm not going to put things that are expensive, in case something happens to them. But,
yes.
Maybe someone will stop in for tomatoes and they'll be like, you know what? I'm going to get this and give it to my sister. for her birthday or whatever.
Yeah.
So just a little sampling of things that I do. A little thing to show people they can look at my stuff on Etsy.
Okay.
And so then you come in here. Now, last winter I started trying to do painting parties.
Those are really popular now.
Yes, and I thought, since I don't do as many caricature parties, again, doing a painting party networks with people.
Yes.
You could do kids' birthday parties. I made a Facebook page, celebrate creativity with friends, something for all ages. You know, it could be a church group, a group of co-workers that want a night out. I did teach a few painting parties in Decatur several years ago, so that made me think. But, you know, really, I love kids, working with kids, and kids' birthday parties. They could have a project going on, like a little painting project, and I could come around, do their caricature, paint their face.
Yeah.
Parents could bring their own birthday cake. I've got many ideas I'm working on. So, you know, I started this area. And so people that come up for produce, I can have a sign-up sheet. You know, are you interested in a painting party?
Yeah.
More work to do. But these are some samples of painting parties that I've done. And so this is kind of a nice permanent area. It is hot out here. And when I...
Yes, it is.
It is. You know, when I get electricity out here eventually, I'll get some fans going. And in the evenings, in the fall, in the spring, I think it's okay. So here I've been working on, I picked up some used tables. I built these, which it's kind of a permanent, you know, I can take maybe 8 people for a painting party, and this is where their canvas would go.
So kind of a multiple person easel.
Yes, I like that term, multiple person easel. Yes, I just feel like I'm always investing, always, you know, I built these maybe in February in the garage, and I had this in my studio. I had tried to do some painting parties. I got a couple people that came. But again, I went out to Lowe's and bought the lumber and the stuff, and I thought, well, you know, how am I going to work this? So I built this because it's an investment. Remember,
Yes.
It's not about immediate return.
Yeah.
It's about long-term, future, you know. So that's kind of what I've got going in here. I use this for seedlings and storage. And you want to come out this way and see the produce sign?
Sure.
So...
Oh, got a nice breeze going again.
So I moved here in January 2016, and one of the first things I did was, you know, plan and work on a nice sign. Again, this is a landmark. Everyone, when I meet people locally and I say where I live, they're like, oh, I know, you're that lady out there. They see the sign, but a lot of people still don't know what it is that I do, or that they can stop by and look in my studio. So again, the produce stand's a great way. People come up.
Yeah, pull them in. Get them to
pull
stop.
'em in. I've found that, you know, advertising in newspapers and magazines and stuff, it's really not effective. To me, in my experience over 30 years, the best thing is word of mouth and permanent stability, you know, being known where you live. Oh, when I was in Delaware, oh, that lady out on Nottingham Road with the sunflowers in her yard. So anyway, I had to put a couple okra here.
That
This wasn't quite perfect, but
but it sure is fun.
it's, you know, American Gothic.
Oh,
right?
yes.
It's vegetable Gothic.
Gothic.
You know, I didn't want to do Veggie Tales. And
Yeah.
then, you know, I was thinking, so in the spring, what I can do, maybe before Mother's Day, let's take a look out here for just a
Okay.
second. Because I did try this year, but it didn't quite take off. Maybe I need to promote it differently. I set up my tent here where I do caricatures.
Yeah.
Before Mother's Day, get people in, kids in.
Yeah.
I would love, my vision for this is very kid friendly.
Yeah.
I have chickens, we'll see them maybe at the end. And, I could have parties for kids, educational.
Yeah.
On growing things, on chickens. We could sit out there. I could read stories on chickens. I used to, years and years ago, I taught preschool and worked in a daycare and taught art. So I do love children.
Yes.
And so I want it kid friendly. My idea is, over the years to come, people stop in for produce and the kids are along and they're like, oh, I want to get my picture taken, and they'll remember this, when they're an adult. Oh, when I was a kid, I used to go to this place and there was all this like art around and this.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the produce stand.
Okay. So do you have just the one garden area?
No, I have some back gardens.
Okay.
We can walk up that way.
All right.
This was last year's sign. Let's go this way.
Okay.
Oh, it's getting hot out here, and this video's gone on a while, but this is fun.
Yes. So,
Do you have any other questions while we're walking?
Where did you get the idea for the arch painting in your house while we're walking up here
With the
with the faith, hope, and love?
yes. Well, when we were looking at this house, I noticed that the arch in this house was rounded. This house was built in the 1960s, and the house I grew up in, Delaware, had a rounded arch in two places in the living room, and it just reminded me of that childhood home. I enjoyed seeing a rounded arch, and I thought that would be beautiful to have a mural.
Yeah.
Over that. I'm a little out of breath. This it started leaning. It wasn't, just for fun, little sculpture,
Yeah.
bird bath, old sink. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I had a fountain going in it, like with a solar fountain. Okay, so got my asters and I've been cutting some stuff down in these gardens.
And this is where we found Marley.
Yes, out here. And, there's a saying that says, art is what artists do. And I guess over the years, there's not always a distinction between my home space and my personal decorations and murals and my business. It's all art. And so these are my back gardens. These were my first gardens.
Okay.
When we moved here. And so a couple years ago, my neighbor at the farm across the street had me taking care of her chickens. And I just didn't have any experience with that. But it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I thought, that makes good compost and manure for gardens, fertilizer. I'm interested in things that are reused, recycled. So,
yeah.
If I can sell a little bit of eggs, it kind of offsets the cost. Then I get the manure, put it in the garden, and I enjoy the chickens. So this is the chicken coop, and boy, this took 4 or 5 months to build.
I love the name of it.
A friend of mine was here, Emily, was helping me hang this door and do some things, and I'm like, it's got some crooked places. She says, it's okay, it's just kind of wonky. And I thought, the wonk hen house. So, always want to make money, but it's about fun too.
Yes.
Using the gifts that God gave me, the desires that I have, and you know, of course, out here, I got a lot of free wood pallets. And, you know, there's a little platform. Kids could sit here. We could have story time.
Yeah.
Yeah, this took quite a while. You know, I had looked online at videos on building chicken coops, and there is a funny story about this. So my son Zach, last year in the spring, I said, will you come visit and help me build a chicken coop? He's like, sure. Well, he wasn't able to come. And I joke, like when Zach finally came, like later in the summer, he walks in this, he's like looking around, he's like, I think that's when he said, this is intense. And I joked, I said, you shouldn't leave your mother alone. You were going to help me and you didn't. You know, everything always expands in my mind.
Yes.
So I saw that digging the foundation into and using dirt, you know, helps with, it's a good design. So that was a lot of work. But I did most of this myself. I did get some help. So we'll go in here real quick. Boy, that story on the 8,000 word dishwasher. I don't know if I have time for that, but we're running out of battery. Okay, we are. Okay. So these are the chickens. You want to just take a quick picture in there? And so the 8,000 word dishwasher story is a calligraphy story. I'm going to try and tell it quickly before we run out of battery. Go. It was maybe around 1997. I got an inquiry from a man in New York. Wanted handwritten wedding invitations. He was in a hurry, right? And calligraphy up there, you know, I was charging maybe $2 to address an envelope. Up there, $5 or $6 just to put, you know, the area it was in. But I should have known, because he was talking to me. I realized later, I think he worked on Wall Street. He was like, oh, hold on a minute. You know, he's on his phone, and I had no cell phone or anything. So he wanted me to get this really nice stationery, Crane stationery, cotton, very nice. I got it in Greenville, Delaware. And he wanted me to handwrite all his invitations. And there were going to be maybe 60 of them. They had to be mailed in like 1 week. At first I thought he wanted me to do the calligraphy and then photocopy it. He's like, no, I want everyone handwritten. I'm like, okay. So I gave him a price, and it was pretty reasonable. And I thought, you know, we need a new dishwasher. You know, it's going to be a certain amount of money. I thought, if I get this job done, we'll get our new dishwasher. So in the meantime, he sends me the list. And now it's up to maybe like close to 100 guests. Oh, and I had to do the like little response cards, everything. Long story short, I really underestimated how much hand calligraphy I literally could do in that length of time and let it dry. My wrist was hurting. I was resting it on the light table for the heat. I had pieces everywhere laying out to dry, because hand calligraphy ink, you got to let it dry 24 hours. My friend Sarah came over one night about 11 o'clock. She homeschooled her children, and I did too. And, you know, she says, I can come over later. And she was helping me organize it. And I ended up getting them to the Newcastle post office, which was open till 2 in the morning. We stuffed them, we stamped them, we addressed them, we got them out, right? And at the end of the job, I figured I in about like 4 or 5 days, I wrote like 8,000 words, like hand calligraphy. So that's my story. It was the 8,000 word dishwasher.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your history and showing me around your studio. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Erin.